Today, we're diving into the massive legal battle surrounding former Prime Minister Imran Khan, but we're going to look at it from a really unique angle, through the eyes of his lead lawyer. We'll be exploring the incredible challenges his team says they're facing based on a pretty fiery statement he made right outside Pakistan's Supreme Court.
So to really get this story, you have to start with a number. And that number is over 300. That's roughly how many criminal cases have been filed against Imran Khan. It's a staggering figure, and it really sets the stage for the scale of this whole thing.
Okay, so hold that number 300 plus in your head. Now let's look at another one. 1. That is the total number of times his lead lawyer was actually allowed to meet with him in the last 5 months. Just once, for 5 minutes.
And when you put those two numbers side by side, hundreds of cases versus one single, tiny meeting, it brings us right to the core question his legal team is asking. How can you possibly prepare a fair defense under conditions like these? It's a serious question.
All right, so let's try to get a real grip on the sheer volume here. I mean, what does this actually look like for the defense team on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the breakdown is pretty wild. It's not just the 300-plus cases overall. The lawyer says they're dealing with about 50 live issues. These are urgent cases that need their attention, like right now. And get this, on the very day he gave this statement, there were 14 separate matters for Khan being heard in the Supreme Court alone. Just one day.
This really puts the lawyer's frustration into perspective, doesn't it? For 5 months, in the middle of this absolute legal storm, he gets one single meeting in December. He called it wholly insufficient. I mean, he said they couldn't even get through the basics of one case, let alone hundreds.
And here's the kicker. The lawyer stresses that it's not just about the huge number of cases. Yeah, he calls it political victimization, but then he says, you know what? We're ready to fight every single one. The real problem, he argues, is that they're not even being allowed to get into the ring. So this leads us to the next piece of his argument. It's not just that they're overworked. He's making a very specific claim, that the lower courts have basically become a dead end for them, and that's why they had to take their case to the highest court in the land.
He uses this incredible analogy to make his point. He says the Islamabad High Court is this beautiful, grand building, like the Taj Mahal. But for his client, there's no justice inside. The wheels have just completely stopped turning. He says their cases just don't get scheduled.
And he gets really specific about this gridlock. He argues that while his team is trying to get hearings for new bail applications, the court is instead busy hearing the government's petitions to cancel the bail his client already has. It's a very pointed claim about the court's priorities.
You can really feel the frustration here. He says this was a move of last resort. After their normal legal paperwork was apparently going nowhere, they took the really unusual step of writing a letter straight to the Chief Justice, basically begging to have their cases heard.
So this feeling of hitting a brick wall in the lower court is what brought them here, to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. They felt they had no choice but to leapfrog the normal process and ask the highest judicial body in the country to step in.
So what happened that day? Well, it was a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, they got a big win. The government's attempts to cancel his bail were thrown out, dismissed. But the huge appeal in the Cipher case got punted to a later date, and their biggest request for access to their client was left hanging, still pending. This is where the lawyer brought up this core legal principle called equality of arms. It's a powerful idea. He basically argued, look, if the government's lawyers get more time to prepare and get instructions, then simple fairness says we need to be able to get instructions too. And how can we do that if we can't even see our client?
But his argument wasn't just about legal procedure. He shifted gears and framed this whole thing as an issue of fundamental rights, professional duty, and just basic human concern for another person's well-being.
Because at the heart of everything is this, the right to counsel. And that doesn't just mean you get a lawyer to stand next to you in court. The whole point is that you have to be able to talk to them, to communicate. Without that, the right is, well, it's pretty meaningless, isn't it? And then he brought it down to a very human level. He said he was worried because he'd heard reports about his client's eye, but he had no idea what was actually going on. He said the family is completely distressed because they can't see him or even get an update on his health.
And just to be crystal clear that this wasn't some kind of tactic to get sympathy or cause a delay, the lawyer made a point of saying this. His client is 73, but they have never, not once, used his health as an excuse. He says they've always been ready to fight every case on its legal merits.
So after this whole impassioned speech to the press, after the day in court, what's the bottom line? From the defense team's point of view, what does this entire incredibly complex legal war really boil down to?
When you strip everything else away, it comes down to two simple things, two fundamental demands. First, put the cases on the calendar so we can actually fight them. And second, give us access to our client so we can prepare for that fight. It's that simple.
And in the end, the lawyer leaves everyone with this final, really powerful question. He manages to frame this entire situation as something much bigger than just one man's legal problems. He's posing a fundamental challenge to the very idea of fairness and justice that's supposed to hold up the entire system. It's a question that really makes you think.